Okay, so I'm looking at question 2 of CAS Exam 5, Fall of 2017. I'm actually not going to solve the entire problem here. I'm just going to do a foundational video because when I was trying to make the solution, I realized that if you didn't know how to do very clearly this particular portion for on leveling, then the rest of it is really just going to go over your head. And plus, I had some trouble mastering the concept with this historically, so this is a good exercise for me to make sure that I understand it and I can explain it very well. So, looking at this problem, you can see that we have we have a couple of rate changes. So the first rate change occurs July of 2013, another one October 2015, and another one October 2016. In this problem, we're dealing with some earned premiums and the LAE and all that other stuff. That's, again, part of the full problem, but I'm not actually going to focus on that. I'm just going to focus on something very, very specific here that I think everyone will find useful. So if you look here, I have two parallel lines, and then on the bottom, I have these dates. Now, these dates represent January 1st of their corresponding year. So this is 2013, 14, 15, 16, etc. All right, so when I make this, I want you to first off understand what this is an attempt to do. It's an attempt to basically organize time. And again, it's one of these things where there's no one out here explaining it to us in plain English, what we're doing and why we're doing it. So I'm hoping that I can, make a difference there. This tool that I'm about to teach you is simply to organize your time, and so you don't get confused what is happening in whatever period. All right, so the way you do this or use this tool is you have your time on the bottom, and anytime an event starts, right, the beginning of the event, you're going to mark that on the bottom line, and whenever that event concludes or a direct conclusion of that event, you're going to mark that on the top. With the exception of your events always should be, at least in this case, I haven't seen any other cases, but as far as I know, it's always going to be about 1 year over. If there's no change within that year, then you just, there's no change, but you still need to mark it 1 year later. So let me mark it, and then hopefully you guys can follow along as we go through. So the first rate change occurs in January of 2013. So that happens to be right in the middle. So we're going to line here, and then we're going to need a corresponding line exactly 1 year later here. Then the next rate change occurs October 1st of 2015, I believe, right? So that's about here, which is about a quarter of the way over, and we need a corresponding mark in the following year. And then the next rate change after that occurs October 1st of 2016. So it's really directly underneath that, and then we need a corresponding mark about 1 year later. All right. So next, I'm going to do something. I want to speak while I'm doing this. I'm going to actually connect, or rather create, and hopefully it'll be it'll be obvious. But I'm extending these blue lines because I want to drive home the point that I'm making boxes, squares, all right? And the reason why I'm making squares is I'm trying to make sure that it's clear that we're looking at a full year in this time period. So this first box actually denotes everything that happens within calendar year 2013. The second box, same thing, calendar year 2014. All right, so the next thing I want to do is I'm going to actually connect these corresponding hashes that I made. All right, and you'll see why in a second. Okay, all done. So now what we have is, but before we do that, let me go back to the problem and make sure you guys are still on the same page with me. So in this case, again, we have these rate changes, 5% in 2013, 2% increase in 2015, and a 4% decrease in 2016. All right, so we need to make sure that we go ahead and mark this. So what's going on before July of 2013? Well, there's nothing. So we're going to have a plus 0%. And over here in 2015, we also have a plus 0%. Okay? Well, what happens here? After July 2013, we have a plus 5%. And we have a plus 5% that carries over into this year. We have a plus 5% here as well. And we actually have a plus 5% here. Not 0.5. It's not 0.5, it's just 5. All right? And what about under this red line here? We have a plus 2%. And we have a plus 2% here. And what about under here? Under here, there was again a 4% decrease. So this is a minus 4%. And this is a minus 4%. And I forgot this part here. This is a plus 2%. Okay? So hopefully this is clear just by looking at what I've done in this case. The percent increases or decreases are simply taken directly from the problem. So now that we have it organized this way, I want to draw your attention to this shape here. Right? What do we have? We have a triangle. And more importantly, we're dealing with squares and triangles, so we actually have an isosceles triangle. How can we use this to our advantage? Well, we can actually use it by creating a weighted average for the actual rates that are in play in the calendar year. All right, so let's look at calendar year 2014, which is the year that's demarcated with this yellow box, and the blue outline in the yellow triangle. So a portion of it is under no change, and a portion of the year is under a 5% increase. So how can we make use of that? Well, a portion of it is no change. So again, if you multiply something by 1, then there's no change. If you multiply it by 1.05, that's a 5% increase. And I think everybody understands that. So the weight, looking at this triangle again, this is July 1st of 2014. So that, and I think if I didn't tell you already, the area of the box is always going to be 1. So the area of each one of your years is always going to be 1. If the area is 1, that means the length of each side is 1. And for this particular triangle, if it's July 1st, that means that this has a length of 1/2. So if we're looking at the weight, we can use the area of a triangle formula, which is 1/2 base times height. So we have 1/2 times the base, which is 1/2, times the height, which is also 1/2, right? And we get 0.125. The other portion of this particular square is going to be this part, and that's going to be simply 1 minus that. So I can do equals 1 minus the base of that triangle times the height times 1/2, and I'm going to get 0.875. The average rate, therefore, for that particular calendar year is simply going to be equal to this rate times the weight that we just calculated plus the second rate times the weight that we just calculated. And so you have an average weight level of 1.04375 or 4.375% for calendar year 14. For calendar year 15, I'm going to go ahead and highlight this. We're looking at this square now, right? This one. And we have a portion that is plus 2%, and we have a portion that is plus 5%. So we have a triangle here, and we're going to use that to our advantage. So this length here is going to be 0.25. We have October 1st of 2015, so that's going to be 0.25. And then we have the height, which is going to be corresponding as well. So looking at this rate, we're going to have 0.5, 1/2 times the base times the height. Okay? And then this is simply going to be 1 minus that number. All right? Now what about the rates? The first part is going to be 1.05. This second part, however, I want you guys to be careful here. This is going to be representing a 5% increase and then a 2% increase. This is a compounded rate. So again, it's not 1.02. It needs to be 1.05 to represent the first increase and then 1.02 to represent the second increase. All right? The weighted average, the average rate level for calendar year 2015 is therefore going to be the first rate times the weight plus the second rate times the weight, which is equal to 1.0506 or 5.065%. So again, I want to make sure that you guys are on the same page. This is just a simple way to organize your time. It does take practice. It's not very intuitive, but I think after breaking it down the way that I just did, it should, get you on the path to understanding that. All right? Good luck.